shriek of laughter cut through the marble hall like glass shattering. Elena froze, a tray trembling in her hands. Charles Ravensworth said, "Careful, girl, or you'll stain the carpet that cost more than your life." The word struck harder than the silver goblet that rolled across the floor. Mara turned her face away, her silence thicker than the perfume of the roses wilting by the window. Elena knelt, gathering shards, hearing only her heartbeat echo in the hush that followed their amusement. Charles' friends chuckled, their laughter swelling against the vaulted ceiling. Margaret Ravensworth looked on from the balcony, eyes cold and unblinking. Elena swallowed the sting and whispered, "Someday I'll make them see me." Outside, thunder rumbled across the gray sky. Something inside her cracked open like the first drop before a storm. Morning came dull and heavy, the storm lingering like a bruise on the sky. Elena scrubbed the marble until her hands burned. Charles walked past, boots clicking. He said, "You should thank me for teaching you, Grace." She kept her head down, the echo of laughter still sharp in her mind. Mara whispered, "Endure, my dear, silence keeps us fed." But silence tasted like rust. From the upper hall came Margaret's voice, ordering the painter's arrival, the one who would immortalize their wealth. Elena paused, cloth dripping. A strange pull tugged inside her chest, the sense that this portrait would soon reveal more than any of them expected. The painter's easel arrived in a crate, polished wood gleaming in the gray light. Charles clapped once and said, "Well, hang our greatness forever." Elena carried brushes and jars, careful not to breathe too loud. When her fingertips brushed the canvas, she felt warmth beneath the linen, as if it waited for her. The main artist, an old man, noticed and said softly, "You have a hand for truth." Charles snorted. "Truth is not a luxury she can afford." Elena smiled faintly. He was right, but truth might yet find her anyway. In that quiet moment, she felt destiny stretch its fingers toward her. That night, the manor glowed with candlelight while thunder murmured far away. Elena lingered near the unfinished frame, tracing its edges. Mara said, "You'll lose your place if they see you dreaming." Elena replied, "Dreaming is all that's mine." Margaret's reflection appeared on the polished piano, cold eyes catching Elena's movement. She said, "The help should not hover near art." Elena bowed her head, hiding the fire building behind her calm. When she turned away, she noticed a child's sketch tucked beneath the frame. Two figures with the same eyes. Her heart stumbled. Whose drawing was it? And why did it feel like memory? Before dawn, Elena washed paint jars in the courtyard well. Her breath made clouds in the chill. Charles approached, coat draped carelessly. He said, "You look almost human in this light." She answered softly, "That must trouble you." His smile faltered. For a moment, the sound of dripping water filled the air like ticking clocks. He leaned closer, voice low. "Remember your place," she said. "Perhaps it's not the one you think." A gust of wind slammed the gate, scattering rose petals into the water. Charles turned away, muttering curses. Elena watched his reflection tremble on the surface and whispered to herself, "Someday the truth will speak." Rain pounded the cobblestone path as Elena ran across the courtyard, clutching a rolled canvas to her chest. Behind her, Charles shouted, "You have no right to touch it." The storm drowned his words, but the fury carried through the wind. Lanterns flickered as servants hurried to shut windows. Elena slipped, her palms scraping stone, the wet earth mixing with paint from the jar that had shattered. She could still hear Mara calling her name from the doorway. "Come back." But she couldn't, not now. She had seen something in that painting, a reflection that shouldn't exist. Her breath caught when lightning flashed again, revealing eyes on the canvas that seemed alive, familiar, and waiting. The rain eased to a mist as Elena hid beneath the servants' archway. Her dress clung to her skin, paint stains glowing faintly under the lantern light. Mara arrived breathless, eyes wide with fear and love. "What did you see?" she asked. Elena whispered. The portrait changed. The child in it looked back at me. Mara's face paled. "You must never speak of this." For a heartbeat, silence settled. Just the sound of dripping water. Then, a soft laugh echoed from the dark hallway. It wasn't Charles. It came from deeper inside the manor. A new presence watched, unseen but near. In the great hall, Margaret Ravensworth stood before the half-finished portrait. Her reflection wavered in the wet floor as she said coldly, "Destroy it." Charles hesitated. "It's only paint." She turned sharply. "It is memory." Her words sliced the air. The old painter stepped from the shadows, trembling. The girl's touch awakened what was buried, he said softly. Margaret's eyes narrowed. Then she must never paint again. Elena, hidden behind the curtain, felt the truth tighten around her like a noose. The matriarch's control was absolute, her fear deeper than pride. But fear, she realized, can expose the weakest heart. Later that night, Elena found the painter alone by the fire, his face ghosted by orange light. "You saw it too," she said. He nodded slowly. "Eyes never lie, child. They remember what people try to bury," she asked. "Whose eyes are they?" He hesitated, staring into the flames. "Once there was a child the mistress cast away. Some truths survive on canvas when words cannot." The room crackled with heat and silence. Elena whispered, "Then it's not a curse." The painter replied, "No, it's justice wearing patience." His warning hung heavy. The portrait was no longer hers to control. Dawn crept pale over the manor, mist curling through the gardens. Elena stood beside the canvas again, her fingers trembling. Mara joined her, whispering, "If they learn what you've found, they'll ruin you." Elena said, "Then let them try." She pulled back the cloth, revealing the painted child's face, eyes glowing with defiance that matched her own. A decision rooted itself in her heart. She would finish the portrait in secret, no matter the cost. As the first bell rang for morning, she whispered, "The truth will breathe." And somewhere upstairs, Margaret's curtains stirred as if listening. Sunlight broke through the gray clouds, painting the manor in a false calm. For the first time in days, laughter floated from the hall. Elena entered quietly, a tray in hand. Charles sat by the fireplace, pretending kindness. "You've been avoiding me," he said, voice smooth. She answered, "You've given me reason to." His smile didn't reach his eyes. The air smelled of lilac and smoke, sweet yet suffocating. He gestured toward the covered portrait. "It's almost finished, isn't it? Perhaps we'll all look better than we are." She paused, unsure if it was jest or warning. For a heartbeat, everything felt almost gentle, until the faint sound of footsteps behind the wall made her turn. Someone was listening. That afternoon, Charles found Elena in the gallery, painting quietly. "I didn't mean to mock you," he said. "My words came from fear, not pride." She looked at him, uncertain. "Fear of what?" His gaze shifted to the portrait. "That it sees more than I do." He stepped closer, softer now. "You have talent, Elena. The kind that ruins men like me." His confession trembled between them. For a fleeting moment, she almost believed him, his eyes carrying something close to regret. He said, "Let me help you finish it." The offer sounded sincere, but his hand stayed behind his back, clutching something she couldn't see. That night, Elena met Isaac near the servants' stairway. He was a stranger yet familiar, sharp eyes reflecting her own. "You don't remember me," he said, "but we share blood they tried to wash away." Her breath caught. "You lie." Isaac shook his head. "The portrait knows. You've painted me before without knowing my name." Confusion burned into disbelief. "Why come now?" He smiled bitterly. "Because truth has teeth, and it's about to bite. She wanted to deny him, but something in his voice, that quiet ache, felt real. Still, the question clawed at her heart. If he spoke truth, who had lived a lie? Elena rushed to the gallery, heart hammering. The portrait was uncovered, but it wasn't as she'd left it. The child's eyes now looked exactly like hers. Margaret stood before it, pale and furious. "You had no right," she hissed. Charles entered behind Elena, holding the paintbrush she thought she'd hidden. "She painted herself into our family," he said coldly. The betrayal burned through her. "You told me you'd help," she whispered. His voice hardened, "And I did. I helped reveal what you are." Guards stepped in. Mara screamed from the corridor as Elena's canvas fell, tearing down the truth she never meant to expose. The gallery lay in ruins, the portrait torn, colors bleeding into the marble floor. Elena sat among the shards, rain dripping through a cracked window. Mara knelt beside her, whispering, "They fear you now." Elena said nothing, eyes fixed on the ruined face of the painted child. "It was never about shame," she murmured. "It was about hiding blood." Isaac's words echoed from memory. "We share blood." The truth hit like thunder. She rose slowly, pain sharpening into resolve. "They'll silence me," Mara warned. Elena looked at the torn canvas. "Then I'll speak through what they can't burn." Lightning lit her eyes with quiet fire. The storm had passed, leaving the manor quiet as a tomb. Elena walked through the gallery's ruins, her footsteps soft against broken glass. The scent of rain and oil paint lingered in the air, heavy and bitter. Every shattered piece of the portrait seemed to whisper fragments of her own story. Mara stood near the doorway, her eyes hollow. "You were right," she said softly. "They feared what could not be erased." Elena knelt, picking up a sliver of canvas that held a single painted eye. It glimmered faintly in the weak morning light. Something inside her stirred, a truth pressing against the surface of memory, waiting to break free. The memory came not as vision but as sound, a lullaby echoing through the corridor of her childhood. Elena's breath hitched as she saw flashes of a small room, a crying infant, and a woman's shadow turning away. The smell of roses mixed with smoke. Margaret's voice overlapped it, cold and distant. One child for reputation, another for shame. The words struck like thunder in her mind. She realized the lullaby she had always hummed wasn't her own invention. It was her mother's. The silence of the past shattered. The truth was simple, merciless, and complete. She had been hidden, not lost. Margaret found Elena in the hall, still holding the canvas fragment. The air between them was sharp and cold. "So it's true," Elena said, voice trembling. Margaret's reply came steady. "Truth is a luxury you can't afford." Elena stepped closer. "You buried a child to protect your name." Silence filled the space, louder than thunder. Margaret's expression cracked just once. "You were never meant to suffer. I gave you to survive." Elena whispered, "You gave me nothing but absence." Her heartbeat roared in her ears. For the first time, Margaret looked small, trapped inside her own choices. The power had shifted. Margaret turned from the window, her voice low and heavy. "You think cruelty built this house? No. It was fear." She looked toward the distant family portraits. "Your father's name was never meant to touch scandal. I did what I had to." Elena's throat burned. "You lied to live." Margaret smiled faintly. "We all do." She walked past her daughter, brushing her shoulder. "We pretend until the lie becomes a legacy." The truth no longer felt like triumph but inheritance. Elena realized evil here was not born of hatred but of fear, the kind that dressed itself in silk and called itself love. That night, Elena sat alone before the reassembled fragments of the portrait. The storm outside had quieted into soft rain. Each brushstroke she had once made now felt like prophecy. "So this was the truth all along," she whispered. She dipped her fingers into the spilled paint and traced the shape of the child's eyes on the floor. The color shimmered like living memory. Mara entered quietly, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You know who you are now," she said. Elena nodded. "And what they made of me." The rain stopped, leaving silence vast and clean. She rose slowly, ready for what must come next. The hall was silent except for the echo of footsteps. Elena moved through the shadows, her pulse steady but wild beneath the surface. Portraits on the walls seemed to watch her, witnesses carved in oil and arrogance. A candle flickered, its flame bending under the draft. Charles stood at the far end, his voice low. "You shouldn't have come back," she replied. "You shouldn't have taken what wasn't yours." Rain hissed against the windows. Between them, the torn portrait waited, half restored, half bleeding color. The air trembled as if the house itself held its breath. The next step would decide everything. Charles stepped closer, anger coiled in his stance. "You think truth will save you," he said. Elena's voice was calm, almost kind. "It already has." He reached for the canvas. "You'll destroy what's left of us." She blocked him, paintbrush in hand like a blade. "You destroyed it long before I arrived." Their eyes locked, his filled with pride, hers with resolve. The wind burst open a window, scattering papers through the air like ghosts. Margaret's voice echoed from the corridor. "Stop this madness." Neither moved. The candlelight snapped, plunging the hall into trembling, half-dark. The confrontation had begun. A sudden crash tore through the hall. The chandelier fell, shattering into shards of fire and glass. Mara rushed in, grabbing Elena's arm. "Go!" she cried. Charles lunged. Elena stumbled back. The floor slicked with paint and rain. In the chaos, Mara pushed her out of the falling debris. The impact thundered. When the light cleared, Mara lay still among the wreckage, hand outstretched toward her. "No," Elena whispered, voice breaking. Charles froze, guilt flickering across his face. Time slowed, every sound muffled, except the soft crackle of dying flames. Elena closed Mara's hand around a broken brush. Her teacher's final gift. The cost of truth had been paid. Elena rose slowly, paint and ash streaking her hands. "You'll answer for this," she said. Charles backed away, eyes wide. "I never meant, you always meant." She cut him off. She turned to the portrait, lifting a brush dipped in crimson from the spilled paint. Margaret entered, trembling. "Enough." But Elena's voice was clear. "It ends here." She struck the final stroke across the painted eyes, merging mother, daughter, and sin into one truth. A flash of lightning illuminated all three faces: guilt, rage, and clarity. The canvas glowed under the strike. Charles shouted, but the fire caught first. The manor roared with light and judgment. Smoke curled upward as dawn touched the horizon. The fire had spared only fragments: scorched marble, broken gold, and one half of the portrait still clinging to the wall. Elena stood amid the ashes, her face streaked with soot and tears. Margaret knelt beside the ruin, whispering, "You've ended us." Elena replied softly, "No, I've begun what should have been." Silence filled the space where voices once lied. The first sunlight pierced through the smoke, falling across Mara's fallen brush. Elena picked it up, holding it like a vow. The storm had ended. What remained was truth. Unburned, unstoppable. Smoke drifted through the broken roof like fading ghosts. The fire had gone out, leaving only the hiss of cooling stone. Elena stood in the ruins, her body still, her breathing shallow. The scent of ash clung to her clothes, mixed with the faint sweetness of burned roses. Around her, silence settled like a verdict. The portraits were gone, every painted lie reduced to dust. Margaret's footsteps echoed faintly behind her but stopped short. No words were left between them. Elena knelt beside Mara's resting place and whispered, "You're free now." A tear slipped down, lost among the ashes. In that silence she understood what the price of truth truly cost. The sun rose higher, touching the broken stone with warmth. Elena sat on a fallen beam, her hands blackened with soot. She closed her eyes and saw flashes: Charles' laughter, Mara's gentle voice, the storm that began it all. Each memory passed like smoke through open fingers. "It's over," she whispered to herself, though her heart still trembled. The wind carried faint scents of oil and rain, reminders of the portrait now gone. Yet within her, a strange calm began to bloom. The weight that once chained her name had lifted. For the first time, she could breathe without fear. The past remained, but it no longer ruled her. A breeze stirred the ashes, carrying a faint whisper. Mara's voice, gentle and steady. "Keep painting, child." Elena turned, expecting only emptiness, yet for a heartbeat, she saw her not as ghost, but memory. Mara smiled, holding the same patience she always had. "Don't let their silence take your color." Elena's throat tightened. "I want," she whispered. The image faded, leaving only sunlight streaming through the broken window. The air felt lighter, as if the house had finally exhaled. The pain stayed, but now it breathed with her. Forgiveness, soft and fragile, began to form within the cracks of her heart. Later, in what remained of the studio, Elena found a small wooden box among the ashes. Inside lay Mara's old brush, its handle carved with faint initial. A folded paper rested beneath it. Mara's handwriting, smudged but legible. "Truth is art that never burns." Elena traced the words with trembling fingers. She remembered Mara's voice teaching her to see light in dark. A small smile broke through her exhaustion. She stood, lifting the brush to the air, sunlight glinting along its edge. For the first time, the silence felt kind. The lesson was simple: art could destroy lies, but it could also heal what truth had broken. By evening, the manor's gates stood open. Elena stepped through them with steady grace, carrying Mara's brush and a bundle of unburned canvas. The sky blushed with fading sunlight, clouds streaked like remnants of a forgotten storm. Margaret watched from a window, her face hidden in shadow. "What will you do now?" she called faintly. Elena turned once, her voice clear. "I'll paint what was never seen." She walked down the path without looking back. The world felt wide again, the air honest. Behind her, the ruined mansion stood silent, no longer her prison. Ahead, a blank horizon waited, ready for truth reborn in color. The morning was still. No birds yet, no wind, just the soft hum of the world returning to itself. Elena stood before the open field beyond the ruins, the air cool and pure. Dew glistened on the grass like tiny fragments of forgotten stars. Her hands trembled slightly as she held the last piece of the portrait, the fragment with the child's painted eyes. She whispered, "You're seen now." The words floated away, caught in the quiet. Behind her, smoke rose gently from what was once home. She didn't look back. The silence didn't feel empty anymore. It felt like release. For the first time, she wondered if the truth had freed her, or simply changed her forever. Elena walked down the old road that led away from Ravensworth. Each step sank lightly into damp earth. The sky opened wide above her, washed clean by rain. She carried Mara's brush and the unburned canvas tied to her back. "No more ghosts," she murmured. The world felt different now, lighter, though marked by memory. A single crow called in the distance, breaking the silence like a reminder that life goes on. Her shadow stretched long in the morning sun. With every step, she left pieces of the past behind, not forgotten, but transformed. The path curved gently into the horizon, where the sky waited, endless and forgiving. In a quiet town far from the manor, Elena rented a small attic studio. The walls smelled of turpentine and rain. On the easel stood a fresh canvas, blank and waiting. She opened Mara's letter again. The ink faded, but alive art remembers what truth forgets. Elena smiled faintly. "You always knew," she whispered. Her brush dipped into color, slow and certain. The first stroke landed soft as breath. Outside, church bells rang, not mournful, but calm. In that moment, she understood the story had never been about revenge or ruin. It had always been about memory, and how creation saves what life burns away. Weeks passed. The town began to whisper of a painter whose work carried souls in its eyes. Children peered through her studio window, curious about the colors that seemed to breathe. Elena painted without fear. Faces of those lost, those hidden, those reborn. Each portrait felt lighter than the last. One morning, she placed her finished piece in the square, a child smiling beneath sunlight. A stranger paused and said, "It feels alive." Elena only nodded. The wind carried petals from nearby blossoms across the canvas, soft and white. The world had moved on, and so had she, quietly, completely. Evening returned, golden and slow. Elena stepped outside her studio, the horizon bathed in soft amber. She held Mara's brush one last time, before setting it gently in a river that shimmered under the light. The water carried it away, smooth and sure. "Thank you," she whispered. Then silence. The wind touched her hair, carrying the scent of oil, rain, and freedom. She closed her eyes and smiled. In her heart, one truth echoed: not all things are meant to be hidden, and not all pain is meant to stay. The sun slipped below the edge of the world. Truth, like art, belonged to no one, and to everyone.